Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's Ecologic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan, and today we've got Robert Fortunato back to dig in deeper. A few months ago, we recorded episode number 230. We talked about his colorful career, a musician, a businessman, strategic consultant, and a builder of the Impossible House, an amazing story that you can listen into if you go back to that episode. Now we're going to dig into his green building consulting and his teaching for Southern California Edison on decarbonization and some other topics. Robert, welcome back to the podcast.
Ted, it is just an honor to be with you as always. Thank you, my friend, for having me back. I appreciate it.
Well, it's great. It's great. And we got so deep into your early years that you and I both decided we really wanted to sort of bring us up to date here.
And like I said, I felt a little uncomfortable with the monologue, and I wanted to make it more of a dialogue. And you have so much rich and interesting things to say, experiences and knowledge. I wanted that to come out in the podcast as well.
Well, that's great. We'll go back and forth a little bit this time, but we really dropped off. You built the Impossible House, and after that, you realized that you had learned so much about green building, and you had neighbors that wanted help doing solar and energy efficiency works and electric vehicle, all the good stuff. You worked with your school district in your hometown there. And so that was really the launch pad. You shifted, like you said before, you used to work with corporate mergers and acquisitions as a businessman, and you found your passion in the green building world.
I appreciate that. It has been a passion. It has so much meaning, and it has added a lot of meaning to my life and the community of friends that I've developed. And you're one of the big ones in that that pool of people. It just makes such a difference in your life when you touch people that understand that contributing to a greater meaning for everybody is so valuable.
It really is. I feel so fulfilled in my career. I know you feel so fulfilled in your career. And I think that's fairly unusual. I mean, you and I hang out with a lot of people that have aligned their careers with their values, but there's a lot of people that are just doing the 9-to-5 thing and haven't found that. And I know you're probably the same way. When I'm advising young students and students that are entering the work world, or young people, young professionals entering the work world, I'm always saying, follow your path, follow your passion, and you'll be a happy person.
Absolutely. Makes such a difference.
So we kind of got into, I think, let's talk a little bit about the school project and then the affordable housing project, because that really came about right after you finished the Impossible House.
Yeah. And I want to, again, I want to make this a dialogue in that, when I was doing my research for the Green Idea House, right, I went to every talk I could. I went to every event that I could. I went to every open house that I could, just to see what everybody else had done. I was trying to do my due diligence, if you will. And really, just from a design standpoint, design intelligence standpoint, building a warehouse of things that I could pull from, Mm-hmm. And one of my early stops was and I didn't know you at the time, but I went to the Solar Santa Monica meeting. It sounded like something that was up, and there you were, and I think it was your brother or Michael. I'm not sure, which one of you was, but I remember meeting you at the end of the talk. I went up and shook your hand, and I was just so impressed with the passion that you had for that, the understanding and the knowledge of really netting it down and making it easy for people to understand. It's really about the dollars per watt, right? You netted it down for people, and then basically helped the city create a program so that nobody in the city would pay more than, I forget what it was, $3.50 a watt. It created a template and a way of thinking for people that made sure that they didn't get ripped off, and made sure that solar didn't get a black eye as a result of that. And I really had, huge admiration for what you were doing back then. And it still sticks with me, sitting in that little room in the city hall, with you guys giving that talk. It was amazing.
Yeah. And believe it or not, EcoMotion is still running the Solar Santa Monica program.
I love that.
It is. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, because any homeowner any business, we've worked with a college, we've worked with a school district, we've worked with everybody in Santa Monica can call us up and get advice on solar and now storage and now electric vehicles and
Yeah.
urbanization strategies. And it's hats off to the city of Santa Monica, really, for offering
Seriously.
that kind of a service, because as you're alluding to, so many people want to go green and they don't really know the ins and outs. And why should they? They've got their own careers, they've got their own businesses,
Yes.
and they really need to be able to call upon an expert that brings it to their level and
That's it.
and helps them sort of sort through the complexities, because the last thing we want is somebody who's eager to go green to get ripped off.
And it happens too often, right? It happens too often. Yes.
Well, I think you talked about in the last podcast, and you talked about somebody that puts, the contractor puts solar on the north side of the house.
Yeah.
Or the north side of the roof. And that works, but not nearly as well as the south side, right?
Especially with the steep pitch, right?
Yeah.
And the equivalent, I think I mentioned to you as well, a friend of mine bought his house on the north side of the slope, right? And he wanted to make, the solar thing. So it reinforces, what you and I have talked about and what we know in projects, that you have. Too often I'm involved in projects where they call me up at the end and they say, hey, we got this great project and can you green it up, And by that time, so many of the decisions have been made that the only thing I can do is, aggravate people. I know I could, in projects, I could have saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, if we had just gotten involved early. And those decisions are cheap. It's pen and paper, But at the end of the project, they've got stacks of documents and they've already moved forward with so much of the thinking that it becomes very expensive to make changes. So if there's one thing I would love people to understand who are contemplating these kinds of projects is get us involved early. It just makes such a difference for us and for you. We can save you a ton of money and make the project work so much better as a result of that.
Yeah, I used to work at Rocky Mountain Institute, as you know, and Amory Levins there, the founder, always talks about the negative net marginal cost, which basically just means that you pay less if you put it together carefully at the very beginning. And I think even
That's
your
right.
house, you had fairly low costs, right? You didn't need a lot of the mechanical systems that are typical in homes.
Yeah. We came out of the ground all in for $200 a square foot, and the average house in my neighborhood is somewhere in the neighborhood of $350 at the time. This is 14 years ago.
Yeah.
It's more today, obviously, but it's incredible savings. And we had a series of design charrettes in the beginning. I teach my clients about design thinking and what that means and how to really tap into design thinking. And so we had a series of these wonderful design charrettes where we just pulled in everybody and anybody who was interested in the subject. And at the time at the end of the project, we had 73 partners on the project. And so whether you're interested in adhesives or you're interested in solar or, electric vehicles, we had people from Mitsubishi there, like they were just introducing an electric vehicle and we were in the conversation. So just as many perspectives as we could get, it really helps at the very beginning of a project.
And then, of course, in addition to a home or a building being healthier, they're just more comfortable, right? If you've done your proper orientation and your shading, more comfortable in the winter, you're bringing a lot of light in, a lot of warmth in. More comfortable in the summer, you're keeping that summer, the intense summer heat out, making sure that you don't get blasted by the western sun. So
Exactly.
often it's just the direction that the building is facing.
Orientation's key.
That's absolutely key. And as you're alluding to, you get it going early, and you're thinking early. And again, Amory Levins at the Rocky Mountain Institute used to say, if you can't afford to do it right the first time, how are you going to be able to retrofit? How are you going to afford to do it twice? That doesn't make any sense.
I see that too often. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I started helping people, just neighbors and other people, put solar on their house, and I've done that for several dozen people at this point. And we always, help them save money and make sure that the project. I actually climb on with the solar installers and make sure their design is correct. And I just see, even with the best of intentions, they miss some things and give them helpful advice. I always, for a couple of $100, we put in whole house surge protectors. It's a dumb little thing, but I experienced myself. There was a surge, a transformer blew in my neighborhood, and there was a surge that went through and it lit my neighbor's house on fire, and and blew out like 5 different appliances in my house, and half of my solar array was down. And so Southern California Edison has a program where they reimburse you for all that stuff, but they sent out the forms, and I filled out the form, and they called me back and they said, well, everything else is covered, but your solar inverters are under a different program because you signed that hold harmless agreement with us. That means if you damage something on our property, you don't have to pay, and vice versa. And so that was an expensive, like $2,200 lesson for me, that the whole house surge protector can be a very cheap piece of insurance, essentially. So it's those kinds of things that
now you got me worried. I don't have that at my own house.
Oh, all right, Ted. I can help you. I'll send you the one that we use and recommend.
I'll dial 1-800 Fortunato, and I'll get this problem solved. Well, I know you're helping your friends, but you're also in the business, right?
Yeah. And as we discussed last time, it's not nearly as lucrative as making lawyers richer, but it has meaning to it, and I enjoy it immensely. Doing projects with people where they get an outcome that they couldn't even imagine, and building annuities for them that help them sustain their families. That's what we're talking about. So for example, in our house, we've saved in the last 13 years $64,000 in fuel charges, right? And so that helps me put my son through college, and and we love doing that with and for other people. And we got involved in a number of really interesting projects with school districts and others. I'm currently working on one of those projects, and what we do is we go in and audit the buildings up front, because we want to understand. It's the first design principle: understand first, right, before giving advice. And so I've done this with affordable housing developers, starting 10 years ago. And I go through their existing portfolio and, document and do an audit of each one of the buildings to say, here's what's working and here's what's not working. We collect all the bills. We understand how the energy is being used. And the things that you find are fascinating, with older buildings and newer buildings, some LEED platinum buildings that should work really well are not working at all, Yeah. And so it's a bit tragic to come in, but I know, going forward, I can help them, correct the course for some of the things. Some of the things are impossible because they were not designed correctly. We had a LEED platinum building where the solar thermal panels were furthest south and west on the roof of this building, and they were blocking the solar PV panels from getting light in the winter months when you need the most, right? It's those kinds of things where I wish I was involved in that project early, because we would have bird dogged that. We would have helped them, and the return on investment would have been enormous over the lifespan of that building, right? But those are the kinds of things I'm sure you see the same every day, right? It's
all these upfront decisions that you make. You get the right decision. I love your point about the annuities and the long-term savings from energy efficiency, from solar, from electric vehicles, all the green things that we love talking about. And I was just on a call yesterday with some homeowners in Beverly Hills, and yes, that we're so focused on the first cost of projects.
Yeah.
And the first costs are something to be reckoned with. I mean, in this case, we were talking in the tens of thousands of dollars, but the life cycle benefits really get shortchanged, don't they? People are, they're so fixated on what's it going to cost as opposed to what's it going to save. And in the case of this conversation I was having yesterday, the savings are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
The first costs are in the tens of thousands. And we're trying to figure out which is the best way to go. And of course, that's important. But I'm always frustrated that, we as a society, I guess, take such short-term views of these things. These are investments, aren't they? They're not only investments in our health, our safety, our comfort, But as you're saying, annuities, this is one of the very best places to put your money,
No
is in
question.
making your
No
home
question.
green, right?
Yeah, and nobody asked the question, what's the return of investment on my granite countertop, right? Like that's not a question, right?
Yeah.
And despite the fact that too much granite has radioactive material in it that could be harmful to your health, right? I mean, you think about the decisions people make, without any knowledge of what they're doing. And these actually do have a real return on investment. And Southern California Edison just announced that they're going to raise their rates another 10%.
Yeah.
And increase the fixed fee to $24 a month, right? And
For people that have solar systems.
yeah, no, everybody.
Oh, everything. Okay.
Everyone is going to be paying a flat fee of 24. So, in looking at these things, the rates are not going down.
Yeah.
Never in history has that happened, right? And the only thing you can do is, put solar on. It's still today, even with NEM 3 and all the other headwinds, it's still the best investment that you could make to hedge against future rate increases, right?
It's absolutely true. And a lot of our school district clients, we're helping them with power purchase agreements, financing solar, and we're able to lock them in at zero escalator. In other words, they're going to pay the same rate for solar for the next 20 or sometimes 25 years.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, utility rates are escalating faster than anybody projected. So we're actually the spread between the cost that it would have been and what it is with solar is only getting better. So
yes.
The economics are actually getting better and better for what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's sort of counterintuitive, and there's a lot of headwinds with NEM 3 and the other things. We won't get into the technical parts and pieces of that thing, but there's still so much opportunity. And I love the fact that you're always optimistic. That it drives me. It inspires me. So thank you for that.
Well, and I guess while we're talking a little bit about solar, I mean, obviously the investment tax credit for residential is ending at the end of this year. For commercial, we got a little bit more of a glide path. But when you do, and of course we're upset about that. And I think 80% of residential solar installers have gone out of business in the past few years, which is tragic. But again, the loss of the tax credit is minimal compared to the benefit that you get from these investments. So I think it is important to stay on that very optimistic path, and very important to keep that longer term view. Do you call yourself an owner? Do you call yourself an owner's rep? Do you call yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. You and I think the same about this, to reduce time, money, and, the exhaustive process, to reduce the aggravation that owners, deal with, is really the business that we're in. I think that's absolutely the business. You just mentioned something about the solar, and I'm sorry, I wanted to mention something and I lost my train. That's all right.
That's
It'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back.
Well, I know I like the owner's rep role a lot because I'm not a salesperson. I'm an enthusiast. I'm an advocate, but I'm not a salesperson. And I know that many homeowners, and again, I was speaking with this couple last night, they're dealing with, always tell people, go out and get at least 3 bids.
Absolutely.
At least 3 proposals from solar companies, or if you're putting in batteries or whatever you do in your home.
Yeah.
But being able to advise somebody without a financial interest, they trust you, they trust me. And that's again, that getting back to the fulfilling career, that's a very gratifying feeling to be trusted and to help people sort through the nuances of these projects. I mentioned to you a couple days ago that we're working for the city of Beverly Hills now.
Beautiful.
And just like Santa Monica has this Solar Santa Monica program that anybody can call us up in the city and we'll give them honest advice. And we'll even go to their house. We'll analyze their utility bills. I mean, we really dig in.
Love that. Wow.
And now Beverly Hills has created this energy resilience advisory service. And I hope other cities do that, because especially here in Southern California, where, the ravages of climate change, fires, we've all seen that.
Absolutely.
Time, and earthquakes and all these other situations that are just causing the grid to be more and more susceptible to outages, means that homeowners now are looking at how to be energy resilient. And it isn't easy. Now, a fairly simple way is to put in a generator, but a generator emits carbon dioxide. And so that kind of that's sort of going counter to what we're wanting
Right.
to do. But we're coming in and we're helping people put in solar and storage and sophisticated controls so that if that grid goes out, even long term, they can continue to live. And I don't expect, and we're trying to finance all this stuff too, right? And do it at
Yep.
parity. We don't want this to cost people an arm and a leg, but it's a great service. I commend the city for offering this up to their residents because it's tricky stuff.
It's so good.
You start combining these elements, and of course, you and I could talk about vehicle grid integration. Ultimately, our cars will be plugged into our houses, and that's another big appliance, but it's also another big battery storage system.
It's incredible
in the houses. So all this integration is what I guess we thrive on it, but homeowners are largely perplexed. So it's nice that these cities, and I know we're going to talk about your role at Edison, cities and utilities now are offering up programs to help people through these complexities.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I remembered what I wanted to come back to is that I don't know if you've noticed this, but when the incentives were introduced for the vehicles, EVs, and for solar, the price went up. Right? And that happens too, right? Yeah. They sort of put a cushion in there. They said, well, the government's giving us a little more headroom in terms of our profitability, right? And so I'm curious to see what's going to happen in September with the actual prices of these things, right? Yeah. There might be a levelization, of that. In my experience, just as I'm trained as an economist, that's what happens. The market adjusts to it. And, people basically take a little cushion out and they become more innovative. And so the costs, and as you mentioned, EVs, are unbelievable storage capacity things. I tell the story, and stop me if I've told it already, but the Tesla Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatt hours. It's nominally $12,500. Is that about right? In your experience?
Maybe 15 installed. Yeah.
Maybe 15 installed. I bought my Chevy Bolt, has a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and I paid $24,000 for it. Right?
Cool. Yeah.
It's like the cheapest battery. Yeah. It's the cheapest battery pack you could buy, and you get the car for free. That's how I kind of think about it. And so as these vehicles roll off the production line and have the grid integration, that's the key. We really everybody wants to push, and anybody who's listening, always advocate for the standard of having that integration so that you could plug your car into your house and your car could charge your house, if you will, right? It could in times where you want to arbitrate the time of use rate. Right? The time of use rate is about 60 cents per kilowatt hour. And by having that giant battery, you could run your house off the battery and save during those times. And like you mentioned, when the power goes out, you plug your car into your house and it runs your house. It just makes so much sense. Yeah, and so I'm waiting for that standard.
Yeah, and we just did a white paper on this. There's about 14 EVs now that have bidirectional chargers that allows for that vehicle to grid integration. And I love the notion of going to the airport, driving your EV to the airport, parking your car there, and letting it make money for you when you're away. Because the grid can draw from it, and in this way we don't have to be building more large power plants. We're creating a really fantastically green, decentralized energy network.
That's the idea. That would be beautiful. We need to advocate more for that. I agree 100%.
Talk about what you're doing for Southern California Edison, because I think we talked about this in the last episode, when you first built your house and you were wiping out fossil fuels and being highly efficient and putting a lot of solar on board. I'm sure there was a time that utilities were a little bit freaked out about that. They're losing revenues, they're losing their role in society. But now you're working for Edison. You're teaching people decarbonization, right?
So we partnered with them on the project. Again, when I went 15 years ago, when I started on this journey, I met a lot of people who attempted to do the same thing that we were attempting to do. And many of them were just really angry. They were angry at the utilities. They were angry at the city. They didn't feel like they got a fair shake, and just really, the venom that I felt, from these people. I said to myself, I just don't want to be that person at the end of my project, right? I just, it's not who I want to be, and so I thought, instead of fighting all these entities, let's partner with them. Let's see how many of these entities we can actually partner with that are not fossil fuel companies, right? We made the decision, we're cutting the fossil fuels for very good reasons. But, we understood that Edison does not make money by selling kilowatts. They make money on building infrastructure. So it wasn't like we were competing with them for something, and we felt like they were on the right side of that, especially at that time. And so it took us 4 months to establish that partnership with Edison. They're a very big, very sort of bureaucratic, as you know, organization. Sure. But once we did, they provided a ton of help and resources in the modeling for the building and other things. And just, I developed a lot of relationships as a result of it, really generative relationships. So when we got done the project, I think we both, on both sides of the thing, we understood something that nobody else really understands. And could we put that together to help other people understand it more broadly? We had over 5,000 people through the project before, during, and after construction, and Edison was there at every step of the way. So when it was time that they needed people to do training, it was obvious, and so one of the people who worked on the project, Nick Brown, and I put in a proposal to do this training, and we developed sort of a flagship for our program for architects, engineers, contractors, and lay people to really understand what building performance is and what electrification requires, and the benefits of those things. And so we've been doing that for the last 10 years.
Is it 10 years? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
how would somebody find
fantastic.
that? How would somebody find that? Sorry to interrupt. How would somebody find that class? Do they just go to the Edison website?
So Edison doesn't make it super, super easy. They use this Umberbach, engine to categorize. But if you go into Southern California Edison training, they have that engine. And then if you put in electrification and look for my name, you'll find that thing. I think we're doing it again in November. So we do it, once a quarter, basically. And then we also do, we're developing more classes for them. One is how to avoid a panel upgrade. In fact, Michael from your office contacted me about this thing. He has a beautiful bungalow in Pasadena. Santa Monica, but he had like a 60 or an 80 amp panel. And he said, hey, Robert, I'm thinking about this thing, and I know you talk about these, very specific things you can do to make sure that you stay under the amperage. And we help them, and I have to follow up with them because we talked about very specific technologies, and I would love to see what he actually, did with it. But we did a course on that very specific thing. How to calculate, what your amperage threshold is and what are all the different tools you could use, because that's one of the big obstacles to electrification. People feel like they don't, with an 100 amp panel, I can't do this. But the reality is, we used to have a 100-watt bulb in every one of our fixtures, so we have excess capacity now because each one of those fixtures is now using 15 watts instead, right? So how, you have to get the right electrician who has the right mindset for these things and calculate the loads. But with a 100 amp panel, you can do a heck of a lot. And there's new technology now. I just got a charger for my car that actually reads how much solar is coming off of my solar system, and it won't break that threshold. And so it only charged my car up to that threshold. And so, the technology that's coming out is absolutely genius.
Yeah, that's really cool. And of course, as people are decarbonizing, as they're putting in electric heat pumps for cooling and heating, there's a big new load. Their EV is a big new load. Of course, you have to have enough room in your circuit panel to accommodate solar. So that sounds like a really cool course. And then you were also talking the other day about home energy monitoring. And this sort of gets to what you just said about your EV, knowing when to charge. But this is really sort of, I guess you're saying the price of CTs are
Yeah.
coming way down. The monitoring systems are coming way down. And that's
It's
really
amazing.
important as we electrify our homes.
Yeah. So to have sort of a, a pulse check on what's happening in your house is super, super important. And there have been some other tools. But when we started in 15 years ago, each one of those CTs, the control, terminals that monitors each one of the circuits, was about $25 a piece. And now they're, a couple of bucks a piece. And so you can get a whole kit to put inside your panel for $200, something like that, that reads out on your phone and tells you exactly what's happening in your house. How much is going to the oven, how much is going to the induction cooktop, how much is going to the heat pump hot water heater. And you could start to monitor those loads and say, hey, wait a minute, this is a peak time where I'm paying 60 cents. I'll just shut that thing off. I'll shut this thing off. I didn't know that thing was actually operating. And so it gives you intelligence that's so beautiful. And so we want to show people how to choose a system, which one to choose, how to install it, and how to monitor that system. And so that's a class we're in development of currently. We also do an EV class, which is always fascinating, in that, people don't really understand even how to drive an EV. The fact that the regen keep a bit, my relatives in Minnesota, they were we've been talking to them, and they come and visit us and they drive our cars, and they're like, whoa, I don't know about this. And they finally bought a Chevy Bolt, and they can't stop talking about it. They are so happy. It's unbelievable how happy they are. Yeah. And in Minnesota, get this, they have an EV rate of 6 cents a kilowatt hour at night.
Yeah, there you go.
They are so happy you can't imagine.
The equivalent of 100 miles per gallon, and then they're paying 6 cents to refill that.
It's incredible.
Yeah, battery bank. Robert,
so
how great! Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you for what you're doing, Ted.
It's really inspiring to hear your stories, and I encourage our listeners to take heed and to see how this is. It's truly a win-win. We're helping to save the planet big time, but we're also helping our pocketbooks. We're also making our homes comfortable, safer. There's so many benefits spinning off of this.
Protecting our health.
Yeah,
right?
perhaps the most important benefit.
No kidding.
Protecting our health and the health of our kids and our grandchildren.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
So thank you for being on the podcast again.
Always my pleasure, Ted. Great seeing you, my friend.
That's it. Thanks for listening to Flanagan's Eco Logic. We'll see you next time.